What's up, guys? I'm Uncle Freedom, coming to you on another glorious and well-deserved day off, kinda, sorta. I go to work here in a few hours. We're shift changing right now. And after the release of some of the videos that I've done over the last year, I went back and I've touched on Gray Man and Gray Man Theory. And one of the most popular videos I ever put out was my top 10 no-go handgun ammunitions. In addition to the top 10 no-go handgun ammunitions, I released a video a few months ago about why Full Metal Jacket ain't it. Which some of the responses I get are quite fantastic. Some people understand where I'm coming from, but a lot of people, it seems, don't understand it. So I figured that's what we would actually talk about. And the question for this video is, why don't we choose to use Full Metal Jacket in a defensive role, whether that is in your AR at home or for an event or your handgun itself? Why do we not choose to run Full Metal Jacket? Why isn't it the answer? In that video, I said it's not the answer. Today, I'm going to answer the why isn't it an answer. First off, let's talk about handguns. So, handguns were clear for my internet safety range people. This is my Gen 545. I carry this handgun at work. I carry this handgun off work, and I train with this handgun a fair amount. This is the most used firearm I have. This is the one you will remember from the, I'll leave the link over here somewhere. This is the ultimate duty build handgun for me. But in reality, handguns are incredibly ineffective at actually stopping a threat. That's not what they're made to do. Handguns are a tool of convenience because it is easier for me to carry this in my pants than it is for me to carry something like this Plinker AR in my pants. How do we stop threats if we don't hit an actual shot stopping situation, right? Which is the turning off the electrical system to it. And we are having to focus on either psychological stops, which I cover in depth in the mindset video, or a hydraulic loss. We have to produce one of these effects in order for a threat to cease being a threat. We are trying, though, especially when we start talking about concealed carry handgun ammunition, not so much for rifle, but really predominant in concealed carry handgun ammo, is we are trying to balance enough penetration and over penetration, right? Because those two things are what dictates how well our handgun ammunition works, right? Does it get far enough into the threat in order to hit something vital to stop the threat? Or does it go too far, exit that threat? So Full Metal Jacket, right, which is the big argument we had on the deal, right? So we've got these two guys here. You know, this is a 135 grain FMJ. This is a 124 NATO. Full Metal Jacket, right? So here's the deal when we talk about Full Metal Jacket ammo. Full Metal Jacket ammo performs something known as straight line penetration, which means that when this hits a target, it continues going straight through that target. Really good in dangerous game hunting in Africa, which is one of the reasons we shoot solids over there, is because it is a long way to get to the stuff that matters in a freaking elephant or a Cape Buffalo or something like that. So we choose things that are going to have a higher penetration, but they cause minimal damage on their way through, and they do not cause as much blood loss just by design, right? Like, this is designed to punch through. So by punching through, what are we creating? We're creating a wound cavity the diameter of this .355 projectile, or if you're shooting a 45 at .45, I believe it's 451, maybe 452, can't remember off the top of my head, diameter projectile, or a .400 projectile if you're shooting 10 mil or 40 cal. Conversely, if we talk about things like a hollow point ammunition, something like these guys here, this is a 135 grain critical duty plus P. This is a 124 V Crown plus P from SIG. No, I am not a fan of this ammo, but I have a bunch of it because I'm still testing stuff. Disruptive ammo expands when it hits a fluid medium, meaning the thoracic cavity of your said, Minecraft character. As it penetrates through, that thing will expand and open up, creating a larger frontal diameter, but also all those little shards that open up are relatively sharp, and they cause more wounding characteristics and damage, which is where we run into a problem that I'll get into in a second. But that's where we cause more of this damage. Now, the other big reason that we choose to run something like a jacketed hollow point expanding ammunition versus a full metal jacket is liability. It is almost the sole reason law enforcement went to that. It is a liability problem. And if you're in the civilian world, you have a bigger issue. You're responsible for every shot you take. Not just like the fact that you shot the guy, right? It's everything that shot does, whether or not you meant for it to happen or not. Nobody cares about, the pathway to hell is paved with the best of intentions. Nobody cares that you were aiming for that guy and the bullet hit that guy, but then the bullet had enough velocity and penetration capability left that it left, exited, and smashed into little Susie next door. They don't care that that wasn't your intended target. You are going to be held liable for that action. So it limits your liability. That's a big reason we choose that, because by design, expanding projectiles, such as a hollow point, when they enter a cavity, it peels back that thing when it functions correctly, and it slows itself down so that it terminates its, penetration at an optimal depth, which is what we want. And if it does exit, it exits with so little velocity that there's no real threat afterwards. That is what we're looking for with a hollow point, and why we choose to run a different style of ammunition. So the balance that I've spoke about is really hard to manage. We have to get deep enough to hit the vitals. And that doesn't just mean a straight on front shot where you've got this far to go before you hit vitals. You may have to take an oblique shot through here, maybe through this shoulder. It's got to come through this lung, and then get all the way over here to the pump house in order to do damage that will effectively end that threat. So we have to create ammunition and select ammunition that penetrates deep enough to consistently hit vitals, but it also sheds enough velocity during its penetration path that it doesn't carry any substantial risk or liability should the round actually exit. That's where we see things like the round exited was captured by the t-shirt on the back, or we found the round directly behind the 18-inch gel block or 16-inch gel block. What we were hunting for is the fact that there was not enough energy left in that round for it to potentially do more damage once it left the thing you were trying to hit. And I get this argument a lot. In fact, this argument showed up yesterday, and that is, see, if you stand in front of it, that's coping, man. I'm here to tell you, the argument that I bet you wouldn't stand in front of it, or people are going to be like, ow, that was only a full metal jacket, that's coping. It is, and I've said this before a lot on my channel, which is, it is okay that you don't know things. In fact, that's the reason I hope people watch what I do, is because I try to educate and teach things. It is totally okay that you don't know X, Y, and Z. That's fine. But it's like arguing that, I have an full Anderson built rifle, and it's just as good because it's never failed on me. The thing is, science and data has shown that rifle will not last as long as a Daniel Defense, a BCM, or a LaRue, right? We know that. We're not even arguing that. And the people that do argue that, it's pretty well evident that they don't have the depth of experience that you may have, that why you've chosen to pick the things you have. Now, where we lose this in the gun community is a lot of the people that do have the depth of experience and knowledge in these fields aren't freely sharing it anymore with other people because of comments like, oh, I bet you wouldn't stand in front of it. That's dumb, right? You're coping because you don't have the knowledge of the way terminal ballistics work, the way handguns wound people, the way bullets function and do what they're supposed to do, and that is okay. But the first step to that is kind of like being an addict. The first step is admitting that you don't know something, or in this case, or admitting you have a problem, or in this case, that you don't know something. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, because people like me exist for the reason that we try to educate people. So everything that we do for self-defense is a trade-off. Make no mistake about that. It's not as prevalent in the rifle world, but it is incredibly prevalent when we talk about handguns. Everything we do is a trade-off, and one of the biggest ones that we make is, in a self-defense situation, is a rifle versus a handgun. We trade off the terminal ballistic characteristics and the threat stopping potential of a rifle because I can put this in my pants. Right, so we're already compromising with a less effective tool for what we're trying to do. We need to ensure that we're selecting the best possible option that comes out of the said tool. So practicalities are compromised here, right? It's more practical for me to carry this every day than it is for me to carry a rifle. 9 mil versus 45. There is no secret that 45 caliber ammunition has a larger frontal diameter, and if we're only shooting full metal jackets, you are correct. It puts a bigger hole. However, 45 ammo is slower. It's just not always where it's at. So we are trading off there. For the people that do view this as a trade-off, is you are compromising size for capacity in this case. And with modern ballistic technology, I've said this before, there is no difference in the wounded characteristics terminally once the bullet is impacted where it's going to go. Same thing, semi-automatic versus revolver. We see this argument a lot with older school guys that revolvers are the king, and they are the king in some cases, but that is one of those where we are trading off capacity. We are giving up some capacity to carry a revolver, but we are gaining like really ease of use. Like you can shoot this thing out of your pocket. And then we have another classic, which is, I've made this statement before, you don't see handgun rounds traveling fast enough to create hydrostatic shock, which damages things by the shock wave created inside of a fluid cavity as the bullet passes through. And then somebody inevitably brings up something like 44 Magnum. You are not concealing a 6-inch 44 Magnum. Not without suspenders, anyway. And maybe in a shoulder holster you can get away with it, but the average person at all is not going to do that. Whereas the average person can get 9mm that is incredibly effective with decent capacity in a very small shootable platform for pretty much anybody's stature. Which brings us to the next part of this argument we see with why we carry what we carry is stopping power. I've addressed this a lot. I'll address it again. In common calibers, 380 through 45 ACP and even 10mm stopping power is a myth. If you do not hit something that is of vital importance to the function of that particular Minecraft character, they are not going to stop doing whatever it is that they are doing. That is how this works. That said, 380's made a lot of strides recently. 30 Super Carry, I'm not a fan. But even like 45 ACP, when we start talking about stopping power, we're typically referring to something about kinetic energy. Well, what if I told you that 45 ACP loadings and 9mm plus P loadings are within about 100 foot-pounds of energy, which is less than a 22 long rifle? We are at about 100 foot-pounds of energy between the two things. It doesn't matter. They're not going fast enough, doing enough damage for it to matter. 357 Magnum, 6-inch barrel, different argument, right? Nobody's carrying that. Which brings me to something I said I would touch on in just a second, and that is hyper fast, lightweight composition bullets. Things like the RIP, which I have heard people argue with me about, that, oh, but those things tear off and they create different wound tracks. That's right, but they create different 4-inch wound tracks in a ballistics gel that has no resistance, muscle density, or bone density. You're not getting anywhere with RIP. You're going to make a big hole in the front of their chest, but now you just, if they're on drugs, you've made them incredibly mad. Lightweight stuff like the civil defense ammunition, they dump a ton of energy. They do, like 500 foot-pounds of energy in the first like 3 inches of what's going on. But that is not deep enough to actually get anything, because if I had to take a transfer shot, hit this guy's shoulder first, I didn't even do anything to his thoracic cavity, obviously, like with odds there, because it just detonated when it hit the bone. Yeah, the guy's arm's jacked up, but it depends, man. If you're fighting for your life, you will ignore a lot of stuff, and make no mistake, if we get into a gunfight, they are now fighting you for the right to keep breathing air. But lightweight, hyper-fast bullets, for the most part, are never going to... It is a bad argument, man. Like, it is... They cannot work consistently with the most important metric for defensive ammunition in a handgun. They cannot work consistently because of the design. They do not have the mass or the actual bullet-built construction to penetrate deep enough to hit vital organs, which is a must if we're carrying a handgun. So that's why we don't choose things like that, because they cannot reliably and functionally do it. I know it'll go through a 3A vest, or I saw it shot into ballistics gel and it looked crazy. Yeah, no, it looks crazy, but it didn't carry any mass to the part of what it is that we needed to hit. That's just reality. And this is one that's going to hurt some people's feelings. I touched this in the shot placement doesn't matter video. You're not good enough for shot placement to be your argument, man. I see this a lot, Full Metal Jacket. well, you know, I carry full metal jacket. It doesn't freaking matter because shot placement's all that matters. You are not going to shoot a sub-second bill drill on a person in a defensive encounter in the dark with your heart rate at 200 and crap in your shorts. You are not going to do it. That is a figment of your imagination, man. Like, even people that train this stuff, like myself and guys that I know, and we are training like active shooter response, where we are physically engaging in simulated gunfights where projectiles are being fired at us. You can still miss, even with tons of training. Your average dude on the street, even your well-trained civilian, shot placement isn't the argument you think it is. Because I bet if we put you on a timer under real stress, you don't hit what you're aiming at nearly as much as you think, which brings me to another great video of we're training wrong. 100% shot accountability. Go watch that. But just like light and fast, slow and heavy is also rarely the answer. Anybody care to guess why, class? Standard pressure 9mm 147 grain was a standard for a lot of people because we have it in our brain that heavy for caliber is always better, but it's not. The composition of the actual core inside of that projectile has to be changed as such that it will expand at the lower velocities you are ultimately creating. And you run into a real issue with some of those heavier weight projectiles that they may not effectively expand and fully exit what the hell you hit and hit little Susie next door. But you can also see the opposite problem with like 147, which is they don't go deep enough because the way they had to change the internal like composition of the core itself will expand too quickly and it doesn't penetrate. The next argument I hear as to why we choose or don't choose things is a hollow point is a hollow point. No, it is not. Quality in construction absolutely matters. Take something as simple as the SIG V-Crown round that is made by Sierra. That bullet does great at about 9 to 10 inches. It does not penetrate deep enough to meet the FBI's protocol. It's never penetrated deep enough, but then again, it was never designed to penetrate that way. But that's that. If the thing is, if hollow points were hollow points, that bullet would do exactly what this 135 grain Hornady Critical Duty will do, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Because it was never designed to do what that round is designed to do. And if hollow points are the just hollow points and it's a marketing gimmick, then that should do exactly what that does at the same consistency level. It doesn't. So that argument doesn't work, man. It's just not a thing. The next part of this that gets uncomfortable, and I hear this a lot too, which is I train primarily with full metal jacket, and I even remember back in the day when Mike from Garand Thumb said that he carried 124 grain NATO for that because that's what he shot with in the military, and that was his argument back then, which is I shoot with what I train with the most, which is good. But in the real world, we need to be training with our defensive ammo more often than we are. And the reason being because your defensive ammo will shoot differently than your training and practice ammo, and that's by design. It takes a lot more work, a lot more expense to make a round as consistent as a Hornady Critical Duty 135 grain plus P, and it does not take nearly the same amount of all that stuff to shoot Hornady 135 grain truncated cone full metal jacket range ammo. You have to go out and shoot your defensive loads. I have seen guys that carried around a gun with a defensive load in that they had chosen. They came to the range with me and I said, hey, first things first, we're going to burn down a magazine of our defensive load ammo, right? Cold start, bill drill, and then a target transition between 3 targets, 2 rounds per target. We're going to burn that out right now because everybody had at least 12 rounds on them. I had a guy that showed up to shoot with us. His gun did not cycle that ammunition. I will tell you right now, if you own something like a Taurus G2C, your gun will not cycle Hornady Critical Defense. It will not do it. It's the way the thing's built. And it's not necessarily that. It's the flex lock tip, the Hornady. It's just not a match made in heaven, and that sometimes is the case. But you have to train with it, otherwise you'll never know that. Whether or not you understand it, and this is another one, is this goes through all the barriers, all of them at the same time. Hollow points can't do that. You're wrong. And I have heard that they don't need that because you don't need barrier performance. Again, you are wrong. Just the other day, I was at a call with an individual who was about to shoot a person outside in their hallway because there had been some things that happened. Well, when I went inside, I'm talking to her, she had a pistol. That pistol was loaded with 9mm full metal jacket. I advised her, hey, you should probably buy better ammo, because if you miss with that, that is absolutely going into your neighbor's apartment, and that's bad. Something like a decent hollow point, I gave her some recommendations, and we moved on. But if you have a guy that's trying desperately to kick your door in and he intends to do harm to your family, he kicks that door in, you see him, and you start shooting, right? And that door slams shut, I would like to know that the rounds I continued firing went through that door and struck that dude. And it's not just that stuff, man. We can look at barriers as in super heavy clothing people have on, people holding things, people hide behind things in your house. Barrier performance for me is non-negotiable. I have to have it. Not only as law enforcement, but even my concealed carry options, I still run it as well. You will shoot through barriers. It may not be the FBI's standard barrier protocol, but I guarantee you in a defensive encounter, if that dude is trying to kill you and he ducks behind like a door that was by a dumpster, don't you want to know your stuff's going to go through that and hit that dude so he doesn't come back behind you and kill you? And gimmicks, man. Gimmicks are just that. That's another argument I get is I like this. What have you seen? This new fancy whiz-bang ammo? Gimmicks are, in fact, gimmicks. That is the reason you do not see law enforcement agencies carrying RIP. RIP is a gimmick round. Civil defense from Liberty Ammunition. It's cool as hell, man. It's super fast. It is a super high velocity, fun shooting, low recoil and little round. But it is a gimmick round. Those bullets that have 50 grains of weight on something where the lowest was always 115 are not going to penetrate, and they are gimmicks. This is not a place for you to play with gimmicks. If we are drawing this in a real world encounter where somebody's trying to take away the most thing we hold most precious, our lives or the lives of our family, I need to know that what I am shooting is a proven performer, right? Same thing with Full Metal Jacket, man. It's been killing dudes since World War II, 2 World Wars. Right. You don't have to abide by any rules of international warfare because you're a citizen and you could do kind of what you want. It's what's great about America. Hollow points don't deliver really anything. And again, as I covered a minute ago, your argument that it's all right, it's shot placement's all that matters. It does matter, but the odds of you getting it, if you don't believe me, go again, see that video. It'll be down in the thing because I've tagged it already, which is shot placement doesn't matter. We'll open your eyes to why that is what it is. Don't do gimmicks. There are proven performers. There's a video coming out right after this one that will cover my top 5 defensive ammunitions, and they will cover 940 and 45 caliber. That I figured that was the best way to do it. It'll be my top 5. There's always a couple of bonus picks in there for you guys. And lastly, when we talk about why we don't pick Full Metal Jackets, the why behind it is technology has evolved. But another thing we have to keep in mind is technology has evolved, but that means some of those legacy projectiles that we saw in the bad old days of early hollow point design from 9mm and 45, like the Hydra Shock or the Glazer Safety Slug, that is a very old school. Even the Hornady XTP, though the Hornady XTP was never actually designed to be a defensive round. It was designed as a hunting round in lever actions. But it is outdated tech. We have increased our capabilities so much in the ways of chemical bonding, mechanical bonding, better antimony of the lead compositions we put in the core, better jacket technology that can control the expansion of that. We've created so many things that make the bullets of today light years ahead of the bullets of even 25 years ago. There is a reason most law enforcement is running one of the core big 3. And it is because they have constantly evolved and like batch tested and checked out their stuff and stayed up with technology so that we are getting the most proven performers for that good penetration depth so we're getting that. Penetrates deep enough to hit what it needs to, limits my liability of it coming out the other side and hurting somebody else. People say all the time, I don't need that, I'm not a cop. Yes, you do. If somebody's robbing McDonald's and they put a gun to your wife's head, you pull the trigger and you shoot that dude point blank and that thing zips through and wipes out a kid in the booth over there that was just trying to eat them chicky nuggies in happiness, you are going to go to jail for that, whether you meant to do it or not. Nobody cares about your intentions. It's all about, did it happen when we start talking about lethal use of force. The things that we have to think about when we are selecting a good quality ammunition for running in our handgun specifically is reliability. It's got to go bang every single time. Consistency. It's got to go bang the same way every single time. Accuracy. Because if we have reliable, consistent ammo, it is going to shoot to the same place every single time. Energy. Kind of an overstated thing, but we are still, there's a reason we don't carry 22 long rifle as a defensive load. That's not the recommended defensive load of anyone. You know why? Because it doesn't have any energy. Penetration, which is can it accurately, reliably, and consistently get deep enough inside of the target to hit the things that are of vital importance. And finally, expansion. Is it reliable, accurate, consistent enough to penetrate deep enough every time while expanding, shedding off excess energy so that it doesn't exit and cause a problem for me later, while doing as much damage as humanly possible to that particular Minecraft character, dumping them on the floor and ceasing the threat to you and other innocent people around you. That is what we are looking for. And those reasons alone are why we don't choose Full Metal Jacket as the option for this when our life's on the line, or if you're carrying this for that. You should shoot your defensive ammo pretty consistently. You need to swap it out at least once a year, but you should shoot lots of Full Metal Jacket, because that's how you get good at all the other fundamental stuff, so that when you do go train with the expensive stuff, you get the most out of it, because you're not focused on my trigger, my ability to come off the trigger and, riding that recoil. It sucks. I should have done that with Full Metal Jacket. Fact of life. So guys, there you go. There is the why we don't. The more important part of the why we don't do it, but this is the why it's just not advisable. And it debunks a lot of the arguments I get, which are, you wouldn't stand down range in front of it. Right, I don't need to stand down in front of a thing to know that a Mack truck would kill me, but I also don't need to stand in front of a moving vehicle to know that a Mack truck will kill me a whole lot deader, a lot more faster than getting hit by a guy on a bicycle. Like, they're both gonna suck. We're not arguing that. But I am guaranteed to no longer be a thing getting wiped out by a Mack truck, where I got some shots if I get hit by a guy on a bicycle. So, guys, I am Uncle Freedom. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Let me know what you thought of this one. Stay tuned, because my updated list, my top 5 defensive ammunitions for handguns in 9, 40, 45, complete with grain weights, velocities, and energy numbers for you guys. Until next time, I'll see you later.